A few months ago, I mentioned to a friend of mine that I wanted to build an apple cider press, and he told me that he actually had one that was sitting in his woods. So he wrangled up all the parts and brought me down this box full of stuff, and I decided to make an apple cider press out of it. This part here was actually the only part that I was able to salvage from the box of parts that my friend had given to me, but the other parts were nice to have for making templates and getting a reference for the overall size of the press. But this had been sitting in the woods for many years, and as you can tell, it was rust welded to the screw. As you can see, I had one heck of a time trying to get this nut plate removed from the screw. I started with the channel locks and worked my way up from there. I ended up having to break out the torch and going all the way up to a 3 foot pipe wrench with the torch. And as you can see here, it was very difficult, and it had been sitting in the woods, like I said, for many years, and it was time to break free. Now I'm finally bringing out the big guns, and I think I should have done this from the start, but I didn't think it would be this stuck. Oh man. Oh, this thing is dry. Yes. Throughout the video, you'll see that the shop floor plan does change quite a few times. I'm in the process of reorganizing everything and getting things established the way I want them to be. Here I am planing the boards that will be used for the slats for the baskets that the apples will be put in to be pressed down into. Um, it's always satisfying running boards through the planer and it coming out the other end basically almost to a finish that most people would be happy with. I don't have a dust collection system set up yet, so most of the time I just open up the garage door and let the dust fly. This is a trick that I've always used because I don't have a joiner, so I take the board and I run it through the table saw by taking off about an 1/8 inch at a time. And then I flip over the board and take about an 1/8 inch on the other side, and usually that straightens the boards up well enough for me. Now I'm using one of the old slats from the press that I'm referencing and just getting a rough guess of how thick I should make the slats. Now this doesn't have to be down to the decimal point, but as long as it's within a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch, I'm fine with that. Now I don't have a fence set up for my miter saw, so I've just got this square set up with an old slat, and I've got it set there so I don't have to measure each one of the new slats that I'm cutting out. And right here I'm taking and using the old banding as a guide to drill holes in the new banding that the baskets are made out of. So the old ones were made out of just mild steel, and I wanted it to be a little more sanitary and easier to clean up, and I won't have to worry about it rusting. So I ended up going with stainless steel, and actually, I didn't pay anything for these. I went to my local steel shop, and they were just cut-offs from big sheets of stainless steel. So I do enough business with them that I ended up just getting these for free. So that was great. After getting all the holes drilled, I laid everything out and got everything evenly spaced so I could screw it together, and I started with one banding at a time and basically drilled one slat at a time and just slowly worked my way through, and I just went from one point on one end and then made another mark in the middle and then made another mark at the other end. And I got all those lined up and then basically eyeballed the spacing between all the other slats, and it seemed to work out great. This part was very satisfying to bend all this, and it ended up coming together perfectly. And I did end up taking the screws back out and replacing them with stainless steel screws. Again, I wanted to keep everything sanitary, and I want this thing to last a long time, and I figured stainless steel was the best option. Off camera, I did end up welding these two bands together on both baskets. I thought about running a bolt through where it meets up there at the end of both bandings, but I figured just welding it would be a better option. It would be a lot more clean, and I think it would last a lot longer as well, and just be a lot stronger of a joint. So I ended up welding that. I didn't get it on camera, but I think it turned out pretty good. So here's a piece of white oak that a friend of mine, Bob, gave to me generously. Thanks, Bob. He gave me a couple of these pieces, and I was able to use them for the legs. And with this crack down, not quite the middle, I wasn't able to get as much out of this board as I would have liked to, but it was great. Once I cut it open, just seeing what was inside of there. I haven't dealt with this before with other pieces of wood, but once I get it open, it reveals a bunch of wormholes. I didn't end up using this wood for the slats because I didn't want to have to deal with the cider getting in the slats, in the wormholes, but I figured it'd work great for the legs. And I also did get some white oak from a neighbor of mine, Marcus, so thanks, Marcus. People were very generous with this build, and when they heard that I was making an apple cider press, they were excited and they wanted to help out. And here's the final dimensions of the legs. I got them all cut out, and now I'm just using a round over bit with my router to soften the edges a little bit. And you can see there the wormholes, and in some areas they went all the way through the wood, in the places where I had cut them. And it was kind of cool seeing them, and I thought it was pretty interesting. now I'm making the cross braces for the two legs, and I would have done this very differently looking back, but this is the decision that I chose to make, and I ran with it. And I went a totally different route on the front legs, and I wish I would have done that on the back legs as well. But they both worked, and one was just a little more work. So you can see here I'm just splitting the, I think it's 2x6 rectangular tubing, and I'm just splitting it and making it the same width as the legs, and then I'm welding it back together. And I use a aluminum backer to weld once I get it to where I want it. And the reason that I use the aluminum for backing the metal is when you're welding mild steel, the weld does not stick to aluminum. So you can just use any kind of aluminum to put on the back of your weld, and it will stay almost flat on the back. So I won't have to worry about it not sliding over the legs. And here I am using tubing that isn't the right size, but I'm making it work. And I later on add plating to the top and bottom of this, and it turned out good in the end, but like I said, it was a lot more work than it should have been. And you can't even tell that these were multiple pieces once I'm done with it. But if I would have just used the right size tubing, I wouldn't have had to go through all this work. But in the end, it went okay. And when doing projects like this, you learn from your mistakes, and maybe you'll never build something like this ever again. So maybe you'll just learn them to pass it on to the next person, or maybe somebody watching this video. So I hope you guys learn from my mistakes, and go out and make some mistakes of your own. Now here's the plating that I was telling you about. I think it's 3/16 by 4-inch plating, so I'm just cutting it to size and using that as stitchers to go in between the metal screw plate where the main screw goes through. So that's one reason why I did end up using two smaller pieces instead of a big piece to go in between for the bracing. the screw does have to pass through. So that was the original idea that I had. So now I'm just beefing it up a little bit by putting plating on, and that should do the trick. And I am putting a lot of heat into this large span of space, so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't warping anything, so I clamped both ends down just to make sure. I'm digging through my materials now, and as you can see, I've got some stockpiled there, and a lot of it's just leftover from previous projects, and a lot of that is what I've used to make this press. Um, I ended up buying a 20-foot stick of flat stock, but other than that, I've just been using leftovers from previous projects, and as you can see, this one was a little rusty, but I cleaned it up just fine, and with a fresh coat of paint, you'll never tell. So now I'm building 4 plates that I am using to make the brackets to mount to the legs. Now this is the new way that I used. Instead of cutting that piece of rectangular tubing apart, I am just basically sandwiching the wood with 2 pieces of metal and then welding a slimmer piece on both ends to basically make a rectangular tubing that is the correct size. And I pre-drill all the holes, and I preferred this way to the first way that I used, and it ended up working a lot better, and it was a little stronger because the thickness was also a little bit bigger than the old rectangular tubing that I was using. And so now I'm just welding it up and getting it ready to bolt to the legs. Also, the back legs did not need any extra support because they weren't going to be under the same stress as the front legs. The front legs will be opposing force, and the back legs, all they need to do is hold up just the cider press itself, and the apple mash that's going to be coming out of the grinder. So right here you can see I have the screw cross beam, and then I have the beam on the bottom, and then I will enclose that bottom leg with plates all the way around. Now I'm building the main frame of the press, and this is just connecting the front legs to the back legs. So after getting the bottom bracing done, I'm at a point where I can start bolting the back legs to the front legs, and this is kind of where things get exciting. It's easier to visualize the full press coming together, and right at this point is where things start to come together very quickly. Now I'm using my cold cut saw to cut the top braces that will connect the front legs to the back legs. And if you've ever used an abrasive saw to cut metal, I would highly recommend using one of these cold cut saws. Unlike an abrasive saw, after you cut the piece of metal, you can almost touch it with your hands. Hence the reason why they call it a cold cut saw. So I am just installing the braces from the front to the back, and this will also serve as a bracket for the apple crusher, which you can see in the back. This is the front of the press, and this is where all the downforce is going to be. And I decided to spread the weight out a little bit for the stainless steel pan that's going to be on top of this. This is a stainless steel pan that I got from a place that I was working at. They had it for a cleaning cabinet, and this was actually the door. And it was almost the perfect size. Now I had to make a few adjustments. The ring around the whole edge I think was about 2 inches, which was basically what I was looking for. And it was full of dirt and some leftover caulk that I had to scrape off, and I ended up cleaning the whole thing up, and I cut it down quite a bit. And as you can see here, I am just cutting the notches out where I've laid it out and figured out where I need to bend. And now I don't have a brake or anything like that, so I made these 45 cuts to where when I bend up these ears, they will line up with the 45. So I won't have to do any more cutting once I'm done with these cuts that I've made. And then I'll just go ahead and weld them in with the TIG welder. Not perfect, but man, that'll work.
Give a thumbs up.
That's pretty sweet.
It's really cool.
What the best I could do without a brake. Wow. I gotta get the other side. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I have to cut that a little bit, but overall it's pretty good. Now I'm drilling a hole for where the cider is going to flow out, and here's an example on why you don't drill at an angle. This is the outlet for the pan, so all the cider will flow through this port here. I'm just welding it around, and I will continue to weld the rest of the seams on this pan. Now I'm taking the orbital sander to all the metal parts. I'm cleaning them all up, just scuffing them up and getting them down to bare metal. And any sort of rust or mill scale that's left over there, I'm just cleaning that all up and getting it ready for paint. And as you can see, there's those studs there, and I welded those in for the apple crusher. And so now I'm just going over all the surfaces that I sanded with alcohol, and I am just wiping it down until I see that the paper towel doesn't have any dirt on it anymore. I've got everything cleaned up, and now I'm painting. And I always forget how much of a mess this makes in your shop until I finish painting. And so I'm just going over this with light coats of primer, and I'll do multiple coats of that until everything is coated. And then I'll continue the process again of sanding and wiping it down with alcohol, and then finish paint, which is what I'm doing here. And I tried that trick where you put your paint can on a Sawzall and shake it up. It worked okay, but I probably won't do that again. And here I am adding the finish to the wood. I'm using mineral oil, which is food safe. So I'm finishing the legs and the baskets with this. And it's always cool seeing the grain of the wood pop out when you finally add finish to it. Final assembly. This is always my favorite part in a project. Seeing everything come together is just really satisfying. I had a little bit of a panic when I ran out of paint and I was on my final few coats, and I still had a few spots that were showing through to primer. So I had to run into town and go get a few more coats of paint and finish everything off. And this is the press plate. So this part goes in between the screw and the apple mash. So it just sandwiches in between there and presses down and extracts all the juice. And now I'm drawing a circle for the top of the press plate. And I don't have a compass, so I made this and it did the trick. Now I am adding this half-inch piece of plywood on the bottom of the stainless steel pan. This kind of just distributes the weight out a little bit. There's a lot of downward force from the press, so this just spreads the weight out. This here is the bottom grate that the baskets go on, and when they're crushed down, it's easier for the cider to press down through those holes. And I couldn't figure out how I wanted to clamp this, and then I realized I was basically building a big clamp. Hey guys, I hope you liked the video. This is my first time making a YouTube video. I really enjoy building things, but I've never made a YouTube video before, so I hope you like it, and I hope you enjoyed the process of me building this. And we've used it twice now, and we've made 15 gallons of apple cider, and it tastes great. So if you'd like to see a video on that, let me know in the comments, and like, comment, and subscribe.